kids, immediately things change. Everything. You ever notice at the beginning of a presentation, people's shoulders are way up. They're tense. Man, you got a salesman's coming to see me. They're tense. I don't pitch until I watch those shoulders settle out. That's why a warm-up is so important with the prospect. But I jump ahead saying about the structured selling. We'll get to there after lunch. Let's start with talking about prospects themselves, because before the process starts, the first 4 steps of my system are figuring out the demographic is the first one. Who are we going to pitch to? Second is how are we going to approach them, whether it's going to be email, mail, fax, whatever we're going to do. Doctors, by the way, we want to cue into this. Doctors are one of the few groups that still take faxes with information. You know, most industries send me an email, right? Most people, business people, send me an email. Doctors' offices still take faxes on a regular basis. So if I have a telemarketer talking to somebody, or if I'm talking to somebody, and I want to give them information, a completely legitimate way of getting your first thing in their hand, right there and then while you're on the phone, is let me drop this on the fax to you, and they have something in their hand. So that's the second point. Third point is actually putting together the scripting to be able to work the territory correctly, and then finally is going to do the contacting. That's the first 4 steps of my 12-step system. Step number 5 is being prepared, which we were talking about during the break. Making sure you have everything you could possibly need. If that prospect said, Glenn, I want it, I can hand him the pen, you can sign the papers, everything's done. At every presentation, first presentation, we have to speed up that closing cycle. If we don't give it to them and say, I'm going to send you a package, you just made the closing cycle longer, not the prospect. So that's the first 4. 5 is being prepared. 6 is the warm-up, what I was just talking about. And we'll go over real easy ways just to relax them. 7 is the questionnaire, this questioning the clarity of exactly what does the prospect want from this investment. How can we make it so they'll be so comfortable in it that it's an obvious decision to make? Number 8 is the presentation. That's where we start with that just a yes or no statement, is where that'll come in. Step number 9 is really a needs assessment, which we will have done somewhat in questioning them in 7, but we really want to make sure they agree with everything, because at the end of step 9, I'm going to ask them this question. Other than the investment, is there any other reason why we couldn't do business today? So we can put money aside for a minute. I want to make sure that I've clarified everything so clearly that you can make an educated decision on it. And this is where they'll bring their objections out. Well, I need to know more about this. Okay, great, I'll answer that. And then every time I answer one of those, I'm going to say, so is there any other reason other than the investment? Because we know we really can't close on the first call, but we can close for commitments of what's going to happen in the near future. Okay? Step number 10 is then presenting the actual investment. Step 11 is closing the prospect. And step 12 is getting referrals and going back to step 1 and working those prospects. See, I believe you could actually, if you're smart about it, I've watched a lot of businesses get built on their first client. Let me ask you, how many radiologists that are doing business in Long Island are also doing business in Missouri? None. Okay, unless they're reading something over the phone or getting it in the mail. Now, how many radiologists know another radiologist in St. Louis? A lot of them. Has anybody asked any of their prospects, can I know every one of the doctors you know or any one of the similar investors that you know, so that I don't compete with you in your territory, but I can call people? We're on the East Coast. Who do you know on the West Coast? You're at seminars constantly. You meet people all over. So the referral business is a huge business. And those sales need to be carried out exactly the same way as a cold call, but they're obviously much easier to generate. So we'll get to talking about getting referrals as well. But let's go back to the first 4 steps. Let's talk about lead generation, because frankly, from what I'm seeing, in this opportunity, and I'm only making guesses because frankly nothing about anybody has been shared with me. I just know general numbers. We don't have enough prospects in the country right now. That is our absolute #1 problem. We do not have enough prospects. And that should be able to be changed today. Because realistically, we can show you ways that we can get these lists in about 15 or 20 minutes. If you really have the gumption and want to do this job correctly and get prospects and make the sales and all that, you have to have a big prospect list. I think what happens in big dollar sales of companies I've done this with before, where I've gotten into looking at those numbers, you have a lot of people that have a lot of leads, and they've been telling the same story or a different story about why they're not buying from us. Doesn't wash with me, guys. You got to have enough that when this guy really runs into an objection that's going to take him a year, like Alan and I were talking about a case, some of those are going to happen and there's nothing we can do. The financing takes us a little bit longer. He was on the 2nd floor. He's got to move down to the 1st floor. There's things that happen. So count on the commission in a year if that's the way it's going to be. But that doesn't mean every week you shouldn't be finding a new prospect that you... Doug laughs because we were having breakfast in somewhere along between Columbus and here, and there were literally 2 guys sitting across the counter talking about their back problems. So of course we jumped in. We're salesmen. We'll talk to anybody. They both have my card now. This guy's been, the first thing he told us was, I got to have an IV of Valium every time they have to put me in the machine. Because it terrifies him. Claustrophobic, didn't realize he was claustrophobic until he went into this MRI. He says, I've been in tight places before. But he was so scared, even after we gave him the new answer, said, you know, I'm really scared of MRIs. And I was like, look, I'm telling you, go see it. You'll be sitting watching TV. He said he would look into it. The other guy was also had a back problem, but I think his was degenerative, and they had basically told him there wasn't very much that they were going to be able to do with them. But there's prospects everywhere. Investors are buying stock, for example, every single day. They take one, they find another, they investigate this. If you build up a synergy and really your own energy moving forward, and you start taking this as something I need to discuss with everybody, who here has put together a group of multiple investors to buy a machine? Okay? Who here has put together multiple investors that didn't know each other to buy a machine? Okay? You know, those are great sales, guys. Those are going out and finding investors. There's not a lot of people that can just plop down $2.5 million. They're out there, but you're not going to be the majority. So the next step is figuring out how do we get them the money. And the step before that might be, if you can't do this investment, maybe I can put you together with a group of people that do want to make this investment. Any one of those options, I'm sure you'll accept sales from any one of those scenarios if it's a legal binding agreement that can be delivered. Now, I would not say that's necessarily the best place to go at first. I would say let people refer you to people and have them put their own group together, but still we're jumping forward. How do we find those people? How do we find the prospects? Well, how do you find them now? I don't know what your books look like or how many people, but the people you're pitching now, in general, where'd they come from?
Off list. Yellow Pages, home book, where off
professional
lists,
associations in the medical field. Each of these specialties have their own associations.
Okay.
So they publicly list their name and address and their practice.
Okay, and so you get in touch with them. Do you find that you try to present to them, and this is a big question, I know it takes travel, but remember, I'll travel anywhere for a deal. The question is, when you get them on the phone and you've stimulated them, do you stimulate them and then try to start educating them on the sale then? Or do you simply tease them and then go and try to make the sale in person? Be honest, because I think I know the answer. I think what we do as salespeople is we want to right away, if we have somebody who's even quasi-qualified in our opinion, we immediately want to try to start selling them. What I'll tell you right now is step back and don't do that. I use